and welcome to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You can tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. You can also now like the Facebook page that we just newly added and get all your other information there and also on the Twitter handles. Today I'm going to do a lineup of my Cardinal All-Star lineup. Who were the 9 guys I'd put out there if I was going to play an All-Star game with just Cardinals or something like that. So we'll do that. We'll hit the hometown rundown with St. Louis FC. And of course, with the Rascals. And then we'll probably just go with a bunch of quick hits after that. But wow. And that's all you really could say for the last 2 days is wow. And even with scoring the 10 runs in the last 2 days, I mean, this offense is still shoddy. I mean, you scored the runs that you needed to score, but, I mean, one inning you put up 7 batters and only scored 1 run. That's almost impossible, it seems like. But it's nothing new for the Cardinals. And now, the bullpen is starting to get wore out, and it was right at the right time. I mean, you almost played it perfectly where everybody just started faltering going into this All-Star break, and hopefully this week helps. But if you look at a guy like Manus has been struggling. Choate's only getting a left-hander handers out every now and then. And then the last 2 days with Rosenthal. And then now you get, and this bullpen's already pieced together, but just little injuries are affecting this team so much. A guy like Harris going down really hurts you because now you lost even more depth. Now you're back down to a Nick Greenwood who lost the game for you on Saturday. But now you're at a point and you're going into the trading deadline at the end of the month. You don't know what to do if you're the Cardinals. At least I wouldn't. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, do you want the bat or do you want the pitch? And they're both necessities right now. Now, things are going to change a little bit with Holiday coming back. But you're still confused in center field and first base. First base, not so much. You're going to use Reynolds, of course. But with Grichuk struggles, Jay could come back at any time. I mean, you're going back to another platoon situation. And at one point, Grichuk was a guy you thought that could lead off. But his strikeouts affect that. You've gotten to a point where Carpenter, down and batting around 260, he struggled so much you put him back in the top spot to try to get him going. And the thing with Grichuk's just, it doesn't make any sense because now when he was coming back before after these bad strikeout games and things like that, he was coming back and hitting 2-3 games in a row. But now it's just back-to-back nights where I even think that it's starting to affect his defense with the misplays in the outfield. But you have a lot of situations on the record-wise the best team in baseball. And you got people out there saying, well, Cardinals could have a better second half. One, it's almost impossible, 72 games left, to keep on the pace that you're on, even though the last week or so hasn't been all that great. But you don't know what you're going to get back when you get these guys back. A guy like Walden. You got to remember a guy like Belial still in the DL. I mean, you hope that's all they come back and it's all fine and dandy. But it hasn't really come like that for the Cardinals this season. I mean, it's kind of funny. You bring up the Dan Johnson, 35-year-old first baseman, been all around the league. And he comes in and wins a game for you. And that whole Scruggs situation is just way confusing to me. Because you have a struggling lineup. You got a guy that's proven that he can hit Major League pitching. And yet you go for the 35-year-old runabout first baseman. The Mark Ellis, the Ty Wigginton of the years before. Which really this year was supposed to be Mark Reynolds, but we're past that point with the injuries. And I don't know if it's maybe something where the Cardinals are kind of worried about everybody striking out a lot. But I think you got to bring up people that have proved they can produce and try to keep them going. Definitely with a guy like Scruggs. And you got to look at that, Dan Johnson being a left-handed batter. Kind of changes your mixture up with Reynolds being the right-handed batter. But you know what you're going to get out of Dan Johnson. You're going to get a left-handed Mark Reynolds. And maybe not to the extent of the strikeouts and things like that. But he's going to hit for a low average. And he's going to hit for a little bit of pop. Which is something you need, but Xavier Scruggs can do the same thing. And the other Cardinals are hitting home runs anyways. It's not like Dan Johnson in that game didn't come up and hit a home run or nothing. 2 RBIs, Cardinals win the game. It was kind of like the Tommy Pham thing. But of course, you ain't heard of Dan Johnson since. He actually did get 3 at-bats Friday, but it's kind of like with Tommy Pham. You haven't heard about Tommy Pham since. Grichuk has been struggling. So you're kind of losing that little backup that you had with Pham and Johnson and Grichuk, and Johnson to the lowest extent of them two at all. But I don't know, just the flipping everything around all the time and give a player a chance. Give Tommy Pham a chance. Give Xavier Scruggs a chance. Not 35-year-old Dan Johnson. I know the Cardinals have always been about holding on to the young players, kind of harvest them to get them to a point to where they think they're okay. But Dan Johnson's not the answer. And I didn't think Adam Lynn was the answer. I mean, that's a guy you hear a lot about. Then I go and look up his stats, and 292, 15, and 52. But then you would have to try to get a pitcher out of that just for depth purposes. And looking at the roster, Garza's probably going to cost you, along with Lynn. And the only guy that you could kind of see there that maybe could fit the mold would be Kyle Loesch. And he's not having the greatest season in the world or nothing. It's not like, oh, go get Kyle Loesch. Bring him back. I mean, his ERA was in the 5s the last time I checked. But if you make a trade for a hitter, you have to back it up with some kind of relief for the pitching staff. Kyle Loesch's ERA is actually 6.17, so even worse than I thought. 5-10 all year. But he did pitch very well here, and the Cardinals still got all that little system that they run. So they know what they can get out of him. And you wouldn't need him for an extended, a bunch more starts. I mean, you would probably throw him in that 5th starter rotation. until Jaime comes back. But then after that, he's just going to be piggybacking, basically taking away starts from Martinez and Waka just to lower down their innings. But the lineup is going to have to roll with the punches, because the pitching staff's already done it. You got to do something to help this pitching staff out. I mean, look at Rosenthal, the season he's had, and you could just tell he was used way too much and just imploded the last 2 games. I don't understand the Villanueva thing and not using him either. That's a guy that you thought would have been a lot more accessible for definitely at this time on this roster. I mean, a guy that used to start, you know he can do the long anything. That's what he's been doing over the last few seasons. And they've been using him as kind of a spot guy, it seems like. Only 36 innings on the year, 1.72 ERA. Rosenthal already has 41. And I don't know, and it's got to be something in their system where they think that this is the best role for Villanueva. But you're at the point now where that's over. It really is. It's over. Let the leash off. The same thing I've been saying about Cooney and Lyons. Which they've been trying a little bit more with Lyons, not as much with Cooney. Cooney's 5 innings, and he's for sure out of there no matter what. But take the leash off and let him roll. Definitely a guy that's 31, been in this league as long as he has, and has pitched all these various roles throughout his whole career. I mean, if you looked at his stats this year and looked at his other stats, you would get a little confused. But he's only pitched at 36 innings. And maybe they seen, and last year he was a low year for him too, only 72 innings. But before that, 128, 125, 107. So you know he can do it, but maybe they seen something last year with the Cubs that makes you think that he can't do it. At least up to the job that you need him to do it. And you can't complain about him at all, because in the roles they used him, he's been very effective. Like I said, the 1.72 ERA. But I mean, and I guess that's for depth purposes too. Because you're just going through guys in that bullpen up and down, back and forth. You're going to have to start using AA guys to get through. I mean, that's what you're at the point at right now. But you got, I mean, the Walden coming back has to intrigue. It gives you that 8th inning guy that was solid so far this season, has been solid as a closer and 8th inning guy. It kind of puts Segrist back in that role to where he can either do the 2-inning thing and save a reliever, or he just becomes your straight 7th inning guy. Which I think that does open spots for a guy like Belial, who's another guy that's like Carlos Villanueva can do it. And Villanueva to open spots like them for the long inning relief appearances. And just to get some more work in. But there's not much out there, I mean, that you want to give up anybody for. Like I said with Adam Lynn, the 292.50, you'll take that any day, definitely being left-handed. I mean, that's a $7.5 million salary. And he's signed through next year. But other than that, there's really nothing. And pitching, too, I mean, the guys that you're looking at for the Cardinals are a guy like Aaron Harang, a 6'10", 6'17" Kyle Loesch. So maybe you just have to ride it out. And maybe there's something we're not seeing. Maybe this whole Marco situation comes around like it did last year. And then maybe a guy like Nick Greenwood becomes more of that Carlos Villanueva, Matt Belial type, where he either starts in place of Marco to give Marco some rest here and there, or he piggybacks Marco along with Martinez and Waka. And I'm not saying like Nick Greenwood is going to be the saving face for the Cardinals this season, but it's just something to look at. Definitely with a young arm, not a whole lot of major league innings on it. So, I mean, there's also a lot of things that look like to where you don't want to give up prospects. There's the Piscotty playing at first base thing. Now, down in Memphis, which could lead to him coming up and being another kind of boost to the lineup that you needed. The small burst that you got from Dan Johnson, Tommy Pham, Xavier Scruggs, and Randall Grichuk at times. Just a shot in the arm, something to get it going. And maybe they just needed a break. And because it's not like they were a big run scoring team anyways, but it has been down over the past few weeks. And Holiday affects that a lot. Your number 3 hitter, which messes up your whole lineup, because it moves around your number 4 hitter and your number 5 hitter, and then you got other guys down at the bottom of the lineup that are getting everyday playing time. Reynolds, Borges, guys like that. And a lot of the times, them are usually the guys that have to get something for you to get going. I mean, some of your offense this season has been from the pitchers themselves. Jaime, Lance Lynn. I even think John Lackey was in there. But maybe you're just looking for these little shots in the arm, the Holiday coming back. Jay maybe doing something to help solidify that center field. Walden and Belial coming in through that bullpen. So just something, just little shots in the arm here and there. Maybe somebody starts coming around at first base, Scruggs. Maybe Johnson starts hitting better. But maybe that's what you're looking for, is just something, just a little shot in the arm that can get the offense jump-start. Because it hasn't been there all season long. And you can't keep relying on the pitching. You just can't do it. Definitely with the way you've overworked this bullpen. And I've already put stress innings on these pitchers by not scoring runs. So I don't know what it is, but the offense has to get jump-started somehow soon to get this team to stay on track and to hold off the Pirates, as they're coming on strong right now. Alright, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with my Cardinals All-Star lineup. That's next on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You can tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STL SN. And also like the Greater STL Sports Network Facebook page. This is something I was clamoring to do. I was going to make it a whole thing, but Bernie kind of messed me up a couple weeks ago doing the whole Langford column, so I just did it at the same time that he did with the Langford thing. But if you had to put a Cardinal team out there, you had to put the 8 guys out there in the lineup and some pitchers, how would you do it? Now, most of mine's based off players I've seen growing up, but you can't just always skip the stats. So I got the big guys on there. But let's just get it going. We'll start with the outfield. And I started in left field, and I've already mentioned his name the first time. But in left field, I would have Ray Langford start. And if you look at his stats as a Cardinal, a lot of people will, as always, remember the strikeouts. Remember the bad times. But Langford over his career, 272, 238 home runs, 874 RBIs, 258 stolen bases. I think that overtakes the strikeouts. Definitely with that he could produce power. He had the speed. He also played really good defense. Led the league one year at fielding percentage and didn't get the Gold Glove. He's top 10 in Cardinals history in home runs, stolen bases, runs scored, RBIs, walks, and he also led Busch 2 in home runs by a single player, 1-23. So for my money, that's one of the top guys, and it does help a lot that I've seen him growing up my whole life. Definitely in your early stages, when you start seeing everything, you start learning the game. And it was him and Ozzie at that time. And I don't know why, I just fell in love with Ray Langford. I think he's one of the best Cardinals of all time. So that's my starting left fielder. In center field, if it's a conversation with you, then we're having the wrong conversation. But it's Jim Edmonds. 06 World Series champ, 3-time All-Star in the NL, 6-time NL Gold Glove. He was the best defensive player of the year in 03-04. Batted .284, 393 home runs, 1,199 RBIs. 242 of them home runs with the Cardinals, and with some key cogs on the best Cardinal teams that we've ever seen in them 2000s. I mean, we all remember the Houston home run. But just everything he did. The diving catches. Just the defense, everything he did. Not many, you don't see a lot of people play like that. Ken Griffey's probably the only one that you could compare to Jim Edmonds. Ken Griffey probably had a little more speed, maybe a little more pop. But definitely on this list of an all-star team, you got to go with Jimmy Edmonds in center field. In right field, I went with good old Lou Brock. Now, I didn't get to see him play, but there's a lot of times when you can look at stats and look at old video and hear how people talk about him, and just know he has to be in that lineup. 293, 900 RBIs, 938 stolen bases, had 194 home runs. Guy you really didn't think about that had a little bit of pop. But a guy that could go out there and hit the ball when he needed to. 21 home runs in a season one year. And boy, it must have been hard back then to get on the All-Star team. He only had 6 All-Star appearances. And maybe that's picking and choosing when you play. And if you're not a starter, maybe you don't go. But wow. The guy that was at a 293 and had all them stolen bases. You figured 6 times a little low. He's also a 2-time World Series champ, which seems to be the little running thing here, but he's also a 1985 Hall of Famer. Now, the infield gets a little harder. And you didn't hear one guy in that infield because that's a pretty stacked infield, right? Or outfield, excuse me. So I had to move this guy to the infield, and that's good old Stan the Man over there. He's going to play us some first base. This guy, I mean, just, you can't, just stand a man. That's all you need to say. But if you want to hear some stats, 331, 475, 331 career. That's an average. Definitely after they changed all the mounds and stuff, it made it a little easier for hitters. He wasn't involved in that. That was before his time. So he was hitting 331 when guys like Gibby and all them were down. Well, it was before Gibby and them, but when the pitching was the more dominant of the hitting of baseball. He, of course, is a Hall of Famer. He was a 3-time MVP, 3-time World Series champ, 24-time All-Star. That should tell you it all you need to know right there. He's also a 7-time batting champion. So stand a man, first base, easy picks there. And we'll just stay right along with the stat guys here. In my lifetime, the second baseman that we've had, and I'm not saying that we've had a bunch of bad second basemen, but I mean Luis Alicea, Bo Hart, Joe McEwing. We had to move a center fielder and ship Schumacher there. Vina did take over the spot for a while and played pretty good. But if you look back through the stats, and the guy that's on the board with no number out there in left field is going to be my second baseman. That's Roger Hornsby. 358 career year. I was going to say ERA. Batting average. 358. Had 300 home runs. 1,584 RBIs. And this is the only player I wrote this stat down for. But back in the day when it wasn't really a stat, and now it's this big sabermetric stat, but you don't see players doing this then or doing this now. He had an OPS of 1,000.010. There's not many people that get even close to that nowadays. To even make that, that's just a good hitter. He batted 403 different times. 424 was his career high in 1924. 424. Hall of Famer, of course. World Series champ as a player and a manager in 1926. He was also a 2-time MVP, and voting must have been hard back then, too, for not only for the All-Star game with the Lou Brock thing, only 6 All-Star, but Roger Hornsby with 358 batting average and 1,500 career RBIs. He didn't get into the Hall of Fame until his 5th ballot. So I guess writers were a little harder back in the day. I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous. 5th ballot for a guy that batted career 358. Now the guy at third, some people don't like nowadays. But it was 10 years of the best baseball that I've ever seen, and maybe he shouldn't be starting at third. There's nowhere else to put him. We'll go with the great Albert Pujols. Now, even with some down years in the LA organization over there with the Angels, even though this year he's coming back on, still batting career 315, 545 home runs, 1,659 RBIs. That's just the Cardinal alone. 328 career batting average. So that's up there with Stan Musial, 331. 445 RBIs as a Cardinal. 445 home runs, 1,329 RBIs. The best player that I ever seen. At least the best hitter. And his defense really came more when he moved to first base. I mean, he saved guys' career. David Eckstein, Ronnie Terrio, Skip Schumacher probably. And you've probably a lot of other guys' career that you just don't see because he was just that good at first base. I'm not saying he was the worst third baseman ever where we're going to have him. But his defense got a lot better over the years. And how about the people that missed him? 13th round picked by the Cardinals in '99. Wow. And he was just a pudgy shortstop, and I guess you just never knew what you were going to get out of him. I mean, things like that happen all the time, definitely in baseball. Baseball's a hard sport with so many guys to scout in so many different areas and so many different countries. It's got to be hard. You're going to miss guys every now and then. It took 13 rounds for somebody to figure out this guy's a good enough player and turned it into a Hall of Fame career. He's a 10-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champ, of course, with the Cardinals, 3-time NL MVP, and a 2-time Gold Glover. So, we got Pujols at third, which moves he right along to shortstop, and I went to say his name, and I just said Pujols was the best hitter I ever seen. Well, the best defensive player I ever seen, and that you ever seen. Ozzie Smith is short. Now, the stats are kind of an outlier. 262, 793 RBIs. Did have 580 stolen bases. 2,460 hits. But there's just other stats in there that show that he was a lot better hitter than people thought. I mean, he had 303 and 87. It's only 300 a year, but only struck out 589 times. Walked 1,072 times. So even if he wasn't the guy that always had the power to get a lot of base hits, he got on base. He saw the ball very well. And that's probably why he was a clog at the top of that lineup, even in all them bad years in the 90s. But some of the good years of the Cardinals is he didn't have to always use his bat to make a difference. Walking and saving runs with your defense always helps. But just for some more on him, 15-time All-Star, World Series champ, of course, in 82. He was the 1985 MVP, 13-time Gold Glover, and, of course, HOF. So that's Ozzie at short. And to round out the players, fielding players anyways, the best catcher I ever saw him. And I didn't grow up with the best catchers either, even though people don't give Tom Pagnozzi as much credit as they should. He really had a lot to deal with some of the pitchers. I mean, you got to think of all the turnaround and all the pitchers coming in and out. The Bob Tewksbury's and the Bennesses and the Donovan Osborns and a lot of young kids. And Tom Pagnozzi was the guy behind the plate, won some Gold Gloves and stuff like that. But the catcher's Yadier. It's a no-doubter. 284 career batting average, which, if you go back, he only had really one bad hitting season. Before that, he was about a 260 hitter, but now it's different. Now it's 300 every year. Tried some years a lot of home runs, other years not, but still a great producing. 284, 98 career home runs, 616 career RBIs, and just to sneak it in there, 42 stolen bases by the slowest guy that I've ever seen run on a baseball field. But he's an instinctive player, and you can see it behind the plate. You can see it when he's running the bases. You can see it when he goes out there and talks to these guys and gives them knowledge. Definitely a guy like Carlos Martinez, who says he loves Yachty coming out there and settling down and talking to him. Spitting his knowledge out here to these other guys. But also, he's done it at the plate. He had a 20 home run season. He's also, though, a 2-time World Series champ, of course, 7-time All-Star, 7-time Gold Glover, and a 3-time Platinum Glove. Now, that wasn't so hard to do that. I mean, the hardest part was really trying to go to make the lineup. But with them guys, I think my lineup would look like this. I think you'd have Lou leading off. And actually, I'm going to go with the Tony the Rooster thing. I think I might have Ozzie leading off. And Lou, because he's got the little bit of pop. But he's also a good guy. I think I might have him batting second. Pujols third. Musial fourth. Hornsby fifth. Edmonds sixth. You gotta pick Jim Edmonds 6th. Ray Langford 7th. Yadier 8th. Then my starting pitcher would be Bob Gibson. And I really wanted to go with Wainwright, and I'll get to another guy that I really wanted to go with. But HOF tells it all. Stats tell it all. 251 to 174 win-loss. 291 career ERA. 3,117 strikeouts. 7-time All-Star, 2-time champ, 68 MVP, 2-time Cy Young, 9-time Gold Glove. And I know video doesn't tell the whole story. And older people probably tell you a lot more than Gibson. But if you just listen to these players when they talk about him, and even the players that played with him, the guy was just a bulldog. He was going out there, he was getting the win. He was going his 9 innings. And you always hear McCarver tell the stories like, what are you doing out here, when he went out to talk to him and things like that. And how he went after guys when they crowded the plate. I mean, that's the guy that you want on here. Somebody on the hill. Somebody that's going to put the fear in the hitter. And just for some notables, I look at other people's stats. Adam Wainwright, Dizzy Dean. A lot of people didn't know that Matt Morris had a pretty good Cardinal career. 101, 62 win-loss with the Cardinals. A 3.61 ERA, and then in 2001 had 22 wins. Not that he's going to start, but just a guy to maybe, if you wanted to go with a 5-game All-Star little thing, maybe if you took this a one step further and made this your All-World Series team, maybe you throw him in there for that 5th starter. Now this is where people are going to kind of differ with me. And, oh well, get your own list. But you could go, guys, with Suter. You could go with a guy who was dominant while he was here in Lee Smith. Maybe Izzy or Eck. But my closer would be a guy that was like the new age Bob Gibson. And he took out a rib. So you got to give him some kind of prominent spot on the roster. And I'm all that's left with this. And that's my closing pitcher would be Chris Carpenter. 05 Cy Young, 2-time champ, 3-time All-Star. A record of 144.94, 3.76 ERA, 1,695 strikeouts. As a Cardinal, he was 95-44, ERA way down at a 3.07. And just another guy that you just look at and you know guys feared him. And then went out on the hill, gave it his all every time he went out. And when he couldn't do it, he was taking out ribs and all that to do it. And you gotta commend a guy like that would do that for any team. And I don't think you ever heard of anybody doing that. Not that I can think of anyways. So I had to find a place for him on some prominent role where I could at least talk about him, get his name out there. And give him his due, because I mean, he's a guy that's not talked about because of all the injuries and stuff. People kind of don't give him all the credit, but I mean, 95-44 with a 3.07. I'll take that any day. But get involved here. Yeah, we gotta get some involvement with the people on the show. Tweet me, Facebook me, give me some guys that you would put on this roster. Maybe you would have Ted Simmons catching. Maybe you'd have a different outfield. Maybe you'd have a different infield. So hit us up on Twitter at the Greater STL Sports Network. Hit us up on Facebook at the Greater STL Sports Network. And the Twitter handle is actually Greater STLSN. But hit us up, let us know what you think. Tell us what you would put on your All Cardinals lineup. Alright, we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back with the Hometown Rundown next on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. Of course, you can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr, tweet the network at Greater STL SN, and like us on Facebook at the Greater STL Sports Network. And make sure you tell us what you think about the All-Star lineup. And hey, if you think different, that's okay. Just let us know. Give us your own lineup, maybe. I'll find something to change next week when I come on and say, I really got some good ideas, and maybe this is how I do my lineup. Because there's nothing to talk about next week either. By the time we do the podcast next week, the Cardinals are going to only have to play 3 games. So, maybe we'll do a little All-Star talk, maybe. I don't know. But we'll start this segment off, of course, with the Hometown Rundown. As St. Louis FC played this week at home at the Worldwide Technology Park on Saturday night. They played the Richmond Kickers. And kind of a disappointing game. But you gotta understand, it's the first season. One of your main clogs in Patrick Duty got called up to play for the MLS Chicago Fire. So you're gonna see a lot of hiccups from this team, and definitely that's one of your leaders out there, Patrick Duty. And you could tell that sometimes this team needs a little bit of settling down, a little bit of ringing in. That's what's good about James Musa coming back. But St. Louis FC lost to Richmond on Saturday, 3-1. They actually scored first on a penalty kick after Jeremy Lynch earned a penalty as he was knocked to the ground in the 12th minute. Brian Gall, who's been your main guy, and I think he scored on every one of his chances. Maybe missed one, but he stepped up and scored on the penalty kick to give St. Louis the 1-0 lead. And they nearly took that all the way to overtime, but Richmond got their equalizer in the 43rd minute. And it seemed like that kind of jump-started Richmond and kind of put FC down in the dumps. And then, I'm going to keep harping on it with them playing the Open Cup, the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. Extra games are going to affect a team when you're in their first season of pro anything. And I know this is semi-pro league, minor leagues, whatever you want to call it. But they're playing a pro schedule along with the added games that they played in that tournament. But it seemed like Richmond was a more disciplined team, and it seemed like FC gets sometimes where you might kind of like it at that point where they kind of try to push the ball too much, and it just seemed like Richmond more had a relaxed approach at going at FC and kind of just hit on their marks when they had to. So the loss for FC puts their record at 4-6-6, 18 points on the season. And St. Louis plays next week as they go on the road. They go to Canada for 2. They'll play FC Montreal on Wednesday before traveling to play Toronto FC 2 on Saturday. And the River City Rascals played this week, and we're not going to go much into it. They've lost 2 of 3 to the Lake Erie Crushers. And then they split a 2-game series with the Gateway Grizzlies. But the only thing I kind of wanted to touch on is the All-Star games coming around. It's in Cincinnati. Pete Rose out there coaching. And that was a nice day to get a win. And Taylor Ard going out there in the Pete Rose game, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, leads the Frontier League with 16 games, or 16 home runs. So the guys were producing, but the Rascals are struggling. And it's really been the bullpen. As they get into situations where they just can't get outs, where they have a lot of runs without getting outs, and that's not going to help you win games. But nice seeing a little power surge off Pete Rose. Nice seeing Pete Rose out there coaching the bases. Probably a lot of fun for the younger guys playing in that league to see the all-time hits leader out there and having a little fun. Alright, let's move on to weird news. As in Augusta, Georgia, a woman was arrested and charged with simple battery. And that is the wrong story. Excuse me, sorry. Hot pocket hyacinths at child's playhouses. Police said 1 person injured and 3 are in custody following an attempted robbery at a grocery store. Witnesses say 3 people tried to steal a cart full of Hot Pockets and Slim Jims from Holiday Food in Huntsville, Alabama. 3 construction workers outside the scene said the trio ran out of the store with the manager chasing them in a cart full. They then body slammed the manager, knocking her unconscious. The construction workers chased the robbers while 1 escaped into a car and 1 ran into a church. The Huntsville Police Department SWAT team was called to the scene and arrested the man who hid inside a child-sized playhouse outside of the church. The construction workers were able to get the license plate off the car that ran, and the police went to the house and arrested the subject there. The third subject was arrested nearby, and all 3 were charged with second-degree burglary. Now, the guy that was hiding was 18 years old. And I know there's a thing such as little people and all that. But how much more notice can you give yourself than the cops are going to look around and see a guy hiding in a child's playoffs? And of course, it's in some hit crazy state where guys run into churches after trying to steal Hot Pockets and Slim Jims in Alabama. So, kind of funny there. This is from Panama City, Florida, as in Panama City, Caleb Joseph Haley, who served as Chief Okola, the FS Florida State University mascot he was their mascot from 2004 to 2007, was stabbed to death after an argument over a gumbo recipe. He was stabbed by his co-worker, Orlando Thompson, at the restaurant Buddy's Seafood Market, where they both worked. The 2 started arguing over the amount of spice in the gumbo, when Thomas armed himself with a wooden board and Haley grabbed a small wooden knife. Thompson then retreated and returned with the knife, slashing Haley in the torso 3 times. Haley later died, charged with manslaughter. Now, in the great state of Florida, where most of our stories come from, I'm just going to say that this had to do something with liquor. I just don't see a stabbing can come from how much spice is in the gumbo. I can't even see myself sitting there even thinking about how much spice is in anything I eat. Much less to pick an argument about it. Now, I've gotten drunk and picked arguments over some random ass crap. But I don't think I'd pick it in the spice of my gumbo. Alright, now we're back on track. This now from Augusta, Georgia. A woman was arrested and charged with simple battery after she attacked her boyfriend. Why had she attacked him? Because he refused to have sex with her. Tammy Lee Romes came home around 11:30 on June 24th and attacked her boyfriend while he was sitting on the couch. She said she was angry that he refused her advances earlier in the day, so she scratched his face, head, and neck and bit him on the arm. The boyfriend ran to the bathroom and called 911. When the police arrived at the home, Grooms would not give the police her name and threatened to run the cops over with a stroller. She then admitted she had been drinking, and during the altercation, Groom also punched her 66-year-old mom in the eye. She was arrested, charged, and booked. Now, if you've seen, look this up, it's on KMOV. If you do one thing for the show, look up this lady, and this is just the perfect lady for this story. Just as hillbilly looking as and I mean, I see hillbillies every day. I lived in a blessed part of St. Charles where some of the hillbillies came to put their trailers. But this lady is just the perfect one. And it's just great. And another thing, if you're a man and you're getting beat up by a woman, do you really call the cops? I mean, is that the new thing? I don't know if my girlfriend punched me in the face, if I could just turn around and say, "You're going to jail, bitch." I think you just walk away from the situation at that point. Just get it over with. And if you look at her picture, you could tell why this guy wasn't having sex with her. I mean, it's scary to even look at. Now, when the celebrities are creeps news, even though he's really not a celebrity, Jason Jared from Subway was not arrested, but cops stormed his home from reports say looking for child porn. This is after his former head of the Jared Foundation, his foundation, was arrested on child porn charges in April. The police grabbed electronics, documents, and other stuff and put him into a evidence truck that Jared seen going in and out of. He was then picked up by his lawyer and left, and nothing much has been said after that. It just shows you something about people that can get the things that we wouldn't think about getting, like even thought about, but just going overboard with it. Going and getting child porn. And I'm not saying that he did it. His buddy did it that ran an organization. But it was said when they went through his house that he had an extensive porn collection. And was very proud of it. So, I mean, you can look at it in any way. It's kind of like the hacky situation of the Cardinals. It's not really a story until there's more light shit on it. And blah, blah, blah. It's kind of weird what celebrities get involved with sometimes. And just, like, I know you hear about child porn just in random places. But it's just, I don't know. It just seems like these celebrities get involved in, like, just the most weirdest, like, off-the-wall things that don't make them look good at all. I mean, this guy's worth $15 million. Jared for freaking Subway. The guy that goes on your commercial and says, "I used to weigh this much, now I weigh this much," even though it looks like I weigh in between. So, just another weird celebrity story. And I don't talk about wrestling that much. And I should, and I really like this little thing with Kevin Owens and John Cena. And I don't talk. It's not like I sit there and watch every episode. I sit there and I watch it with my kid. My kid's into it, 8 years old. Loves John Cena. Loves. I think he just loves the show. Loves mostly the baby faces. He likes some heels. I think he likes Owens. I think he likes Rusev. But I think that Kevin Owens and John Cena, mostly Kevin Owens, now that he's going to be on the big roster full time since they made him lose the next title, could really turn into something, because he's kind of like that new heel and not backing down. Because, some of the new heels are kind of runaway heels. And the Seth Rollins heels, but it seems like that they're going to kind of promote him as going after, being the guy to go after a guy like Cena. And maybe later on, you know, the guys like Ambrose and Roman Reigns. But they put him in with a guy in John Cena to put his name out there. And you see John Cena has, you know, lost in his first match in a pay-per-view to him. So you can see that John Cena's also trying to play to make him a better guy. But there was documents released, and it's nothing important, but just something to talk about, of what Vince McMahon told the announcers how to act, or how to talk. And if you listen to some of Vince's old commentary on, the WWE Network, I don't know if Vince should be giving out that kind of information. But this is kind of simple stuff. Telling him not to call the championship the strap, you know. Just little nitpick things here and there that I thought was kind of cool. I like seeing this kind of stuff. Like that Cardinals thing. Once I get more information on that and see everything I can see on that, that's the kind of stuff that intrigues me for some reason. And it was kind of cool to see what Vince McMahon, you know, say, I don't use this, don't say this. Don't call it a ring, call it a squared circle. We just little nicks and picks to make the show more interesting. Told the announcers to act like a fan more than they are a commentator. Don't ever put the stardom on yourself, because the commentator's not the star. Just little tidbits to make the show run better. And I just like seeing that kind of stuff. And I sat there and I went through 7 pages of absolutely nothing. But it was fun to me, and it's just something. Go look them up if you want to see them. It's nothing really that big, but it's kind of cool to see the goings-ons in the background of these sports. Alright, that's going to do it for Weird News. And just for some quick hits, as everybody was hoping and praying that when we seen the Twitter thing on, I think it was Saturday night, that Jason Tatum was going to make his decision Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, that it was SLU. But Jason Tatum decided that he was going to choose Duke over SLU, Kentucky, and North Carolina. And why not? Why not go to the best coach in the nation? So it's nice to see St. Louis guys, you know, get out there, get their name out there. He's probably a one and done. I might go buy the NBA the year that he's on it. That's more St. Louis guys. Get you a little St. Louis team going. That'd be kind of cool. Did you watch this UFC 189? It turned into a just crazy fights, just out of nowhere knockouts. The ring looked like old wrestling things where they used to cut themselves. They looked ridiculous. 15 medical suspensions handed out, including some that could put guys out until 2016. And now the best picture from this fight was Robbie Lawler, and Rory McDonald took a picture from the hospital after the fight. I think Rory was sitting on a bed and Robbie standing up next to him. But they went straight from the hospital at that fight, and then they threw it out there on the Twitter. Now Robbie, the winner, the welterweight title winner, Mr. Lawler, was suspended 45 days medical suspension for his lip lacerations. Now the opponent that he beat, Rory McDonald, and Lawler won that fight in the 5th round by TKO. He's got 90 days suspension, no contact for 75, and must have his fractured nose cleared by a doctor or no more contest for 180 days. So almost half a year without fighting for that nose. Now in the main event, Conor McGregor won the interim featherweight title. Like Chad Mendes out in round 2. Conor McGregor's going to have 45 days of no contact for an eyebrow laceration. And Chad Mendez, 21 days, no contact for 15, and must have his right thumb cleared by doctors, or 180 days of no contest. Now that tells you that them guys were fighting. They were fighting for their lives. That they could risk half a year to go out there for this one match and to put a show on for the UFC. And I really don't know what they could have done to stop this. I mean, and those weren't the only ones. I mean, there was 15. That's just 4 of them. There was 11 more handed out for all the fights. So is that going to be a downfall where people start saying, oh, it's a bloodbath? It's whatever they used to call it. Whatever they used to call it back in the day. But basically like cockfighting. Or if people actually leave us alone and just take the entertainment. And moving on to DeAndre Jordan, who was in talks with the Mavs, verbally committed to a 4-year, $80 million max deal, but then was talked out of it, some say by Chris Paul, to sign a 4-year, $88 million max deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. And really the whole funny thing about this situation was a guy, and you see it all the time, and people don't front these guys out enough. But Mark Cuban, when that Chris Broussard, who said Mark Cuban was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, texting family members, blah, blah, and all that. Mark Cuban said, prove it, and I'll give $100,000 to your charity. And of course, Broussard backed off and said he should check his sources. But it's kind of messed up that you can do that kind of thing, and it happens. It probably happens a lot more that we don't hear about it. I mean, it happens in college all the time with the colleges. But they sat there and they put all this money on you, the Mavs did, and wait on you while all these other players are getting signed and all that, and then you turn around and get talked out of it. I mean, there's got to be some kind of penalty for that. I don't know what you could do. But ain't that kind of tampering if you're the Clippers? If that guy's already got a verbal deal and you're in his ear, and you got your players going in his ear? I mean, to me, that just seems like it's some kind of tampering. And it doesn't make any sense how that you couldn't stop that. But right now, the NBA is spending money like crazy, so I mean, Mark Cuban will go out and find some other guy that can't hit free throws and 7 foot tall too. So it's not like it's the biggest deal to him, but that is a big deal to lose what could be an all-star center. And definitely when it's in the back of your mind that you have him and you're not worried about it, then all of a sudden the next thing you know, he's ignoring your phone calls and all that on the sign date. And not letting you know where he's at, and he's actually over there signing with the Clippers. So there's got to be some kind of retribution for that. And I just don't know what it is, and I'm not the guy to say what it is. But maybe a fine to him, and it's something to the Mavericks, a draft pick, something should cost, the Clippers, for them basically tampering with the player that was already signed. And now we're just moving on. Sports, basketball, UFC, basketball. Now we're going back to good old the NFL, as Deb Bryant has told Stephen Jones and everybody that follows him on Twitter, and everybody that follows the NFL, ESPN, NFL and ESPN, because they retweet everything any of these players say, that he would not return to the camp of the Dallas Cowboys without a new long-term deal, as he has not signed his franchise tender yet. And these usually don't last all that much because of how much the missing practices cost you, and missing the games and all that cost you. But he does seem like a little bit of a feisty one. But with his head and things like that. I kind of got to look at the Cowboys as being smart here. Is maybe using this one more year is to see where he's at. Because do you really want to risk a lot of money on a nutcase? On a guy that maybe could actually end up costing your team and helping your team, and you're paying him $20 million. But hey, I mean, you gotta let a guy. You can't be mad at Des Bryant because he's just trying to go out there and support his family and support himself and whatever his habits are. I don't want to really call them habits. I can't think of the word right now, but hey, I mean, get as much money as you can while the getting's hot. Definitely in a league that doesn't guarantee you as much as you get older. So the best time to get it is now, as soon as you can. Because the NFL likes to just throw you away like dog meat as long as your contract isn't guaranteed. And sometimes even if it is guaranteed. But I don't think that Des Bryant the guy to go down without a fight. But I don't see this lasting. I think I would say about half a training camp. After they add up all the fines, they'll probably take 75% of them off, and he'll get some kind of deal, maybe a 2-3 year deal. Something will work out for both teams. It just always happens that way. All right, we're ending the show on a Blues note as the Blues signed Vladimir Tarasenko, yes, to 8 years, $60 million contract. The contract starts at $8 million in 2015 and 16, and when it ends in 2022-23, it'll be at an average annual value of $5.5 million, and Tarasenko will only be 31 at the time. Now, I asked somebody that's known Blues beat writers and such, and never got an answer. But does the TJ Oshie trade affect this deal at all? Does this deal happen for as much money with that extra Oshie money on there? And this year it's only $500,000, but it was $3.75. That's all you're saving with the trade. But if you would have had him on your roster, that's $375 next year. And this also puts the Blues in a kind of a messed up situation. Is with that contract, it kind of ends everything for you. Trade, I mean, not with trades maybe, but free agency and stuff, because you're only $1.5 million under the cap, and with penalties from last year and things like that, you're really at about $1 million. But you had to sign this guy. There was no. It's a no doubter. You have to keep scoring here, and that's something that we have never done. From Brandon Shanahan to Brett Hall to Scott Stevens, there's a lot of guys that we didn't keep here that were prolific goal scorers, and they went on to win Stanley Cups and do bigger and better things than they did in St. Louis. So it's nice that the Blues have stepped up, and they've done it twice now in the last 2 years with Stastny and Tarasenko to get players here to make this team better. The slight problem with them two contracts is you add a back is $4.5 million and a Steen's $5.8, and that's over 35% of your salary, 35.4ish. That's only from 4 players. That's only filling out one forward line. So that means you got to fill out 2 other forward lines, plus Steen would go on another one, or whoever would go on another one. So that's 8 guys just there with only 62% of your money. Or excuse me, 65% of your money. And then with the contracts like Shattenkirk, I mean, that percentage is, and Petrolano, that percentage just keeps going up. So you had to get rid of that Oshie contract, and now you got to hope that your young guys produce. Because next year it's Schwartz, and then a couple more years down the road it's Ratty, and then you have to keep these guys around. Definitely the guys that you draft, but also the players that can score the goals, because you don't have them players. Steen and Tarasenko, that's it, really. Schwartz is coming on. But you're going to need them young guys to step up and score. Ty Ratty. And later on, Fabry. And so on and so forth. But this is a contract you had to do. You couldn't let this guy go and expect people to still pay you the money they pay you. Even though this is a team that's not making any money, like the Cardinals and the Rams and all that are, you still have to put some foot forward to get people to come out and watch your product. Or they would just all buy FSN subscriptions, and they would just watch at home. So you have to put a good product on the ice. And if you never heard about the Scott trade, it's supposedly one of the best venues to watch a game at, with all the inside excitement and theatrics and all that. But you also have to put a good product on the ice to get people to even want to show up to them games. They're not going to show up for the nice lifty light show, but it's nice to have it when you're going to a game and getting involved and the team's good. But you're going to start seeing, and it's not going to be this year, but like with the Backus contract next year, they're going to start shedding here and there. And hopefully these young guys come up and produce. Or you find a guy that you use some of that shaving money that's a lot better than the production you've had. So some of the players over the past couple years, definitely in the playoffs. Alright, that's going to do it. We'll talk to you next week, as this is the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. I'm Robert Bowlesby. See you next week.